It is August 2020 for all those in the future who are watching this. So it seemed like a good time for us to do a homeschool video.
Are the back to school sales this year going to include like masks with prints on them?
Yes. Shouldn't joke about it.
I shouldn't.
But
Thanks
yes,
to
they
COVID,
do.
there is a huge influx of people wondering about homeschooling.
We've had a lot of questions asking us how we homeschool, why we homeschool, and in this video we'll try to answer those questions.
Thanks for watching what is going to be a 3-part series all about homeschooling. Today we're going to talk about why we think you should homeschool.
Is that what we're going to talk
Absolutely.
about?
I knew you'd be all
why
PC about this.
we are doing it.
But we're making this video, we're not convincing ourselves. We're helping other people make the decision why they might want to homeschool.
Yes.
We already
Why
homeschool.
or why not you should homeschool? How's that?
Why you should homeschool. So as we get into this, we're coming from where we are now today, having homeschooled 5 kids, up to the age of 10. Let's just, before we dive in any deeper, say we of course think this is the best, or we wouldn't do it for our kids. We think homeschooling's the best. If you take your kids to public school, we don't think you're a bad person. We're not saying you're a bad person, but we do think it's the best, and that's why we do it.
Yeah, what we're saying is people make different decisions for their kids, and everyone has a right to do that.
Yeah, and then second, just acknowledging that nothing is perfect. Nothing can do everything. So as we talk about homeschooling and its pros, we also admit there are things that public school does better, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, this is not an attack on parents who choose to have their kids in public school.
It's not an attack on teachers.
It's not an attack on teachers. We're talking about our kids, why we chose homeschooling for them, and why we feel like homeschooling for us is a better option than public school.
And I will present the argument why I think it's a better option for every child.
Oh, right. Yeah, most.
But you can choose what you want to do.
Right.
Okay. The next video is going to be the how we do it, because just because you homeschool, I can say to 10 different parents, oh, you homeschool, so do we, and all 10 of us might do something different. So we're just going to, in the next video, talk about how we do it.
And then we'll do a Q&A. So any questions you have about homeschooling that we could help answer for you, let us know.
Hashtag Ask Homesteady in your comments so we can find it when we do that Ask Homesteady. Let's dive into why I didn't want to homeschool.
I'm gonna turn the air on first.
The air. I didn't want to homeschool.
Why not?
I was worried about all the things I think most parents who have never considered homeschooling and then suddenly have to consider it are worried about. Neither of us went to college. Are we going to be able to give our kids a good education? Are they going to learn what they need to learn? What about socialization? I knew some homeschool kids growing up. I thought they were weird. Third, really just not knowing how we would even go about doing that. So those 3 things I think were my biggest I don't know.
Aust and I both came from a similar education background, which is public school for 12 years. No real issues with it, right?
Yeah, no, we had a good time in high school, middle school. We were both popular-ish.
We both got best personality.
Yeah, we were voted that in our...
2 totally different states, 2 totally different high schools.
We weren't like the cool kids popular, but like nobody, didn't have
We were
anybody
nice.
picked on us in the older years. I got picked on in elementary school, but I had a lisp and glasses, so...
So he was against
I was asking for
homeschooling.
it.
You were against homeschooling.
Yeah.
I was 100% for homeschooling. Even though I didn't homeschool, I always wanted to, but I didn't. Because I had a little boy who was very active.
So, my bed is never the bed for flowers. It's always a jungle.
We got some flowers.
So, for starters, here are the peppers, which I don't know what they are, because I used to, but I don't really keep track of things in the garden. Here's are the other peppers.
And I would try to sit him down, like, let's learn our numbers, let's learn our letters, let's learn some words. And as soon as I would sit him down, I could see him just tense, stiffen, like dig his heels in, and it was miserable. It was miserable for him, it was miserable for me.
So how do I know which ones are mine? Let me see. My dad told me that the black ones were mine.
And I knew from talking with parents whose little boys were older than my son that they went to school and they had the same issue. They didn't want to sit down. They were given a label. They were hyperactive. They were ADHD. They had all these issues. They were slow learners. They weren't keeping up with everybody else. I saw my little boy and I thought, I don't want that for him because I know he's so smart.
So this group's called the Blueberries, sort of like Bluebird. And we just bought these chicks today. So now we just set up this nice little place for them to go into to keep them in for now until we get a set up outside for them. Remember, we gotta do the water thing. Remember?
He was smart, but he didn't want to sit down. He didn't want to stand in a line. He didn't want to be told to be quiet every 5 minutes, and he would have been.
Oh yeah.
Because he thinks and he talks. And I couldn't see at 5 years old putting him in a learning environment that would be so counterintuitive to the way he learned. I saw growing up with people in my close circle that if they weren't on track with what everybody else in the classroom was doing, they'll get the label behind. And I think that's the stupidest thing to ever call a child because we all develop differently. So who may be ahead in one is behind in another. They're just different growth. Well, these kids labeled behind suffered their entire way through school with a lack of confidence, and they had low self-esteem that until today, these people feel like they are not, and they're successful business people, they are successful parents and people in general, but they still feel less than. They still feel like they're dumb in areas. I never wanted that for my kids. I wanted them to have the confidence that even if somebody else is better in this area, well, hey, I'm good at this. This is what I want to be good at. I can do this.
Something we did want the educating of our children to accomplish is to prepare them for the world that we live in today, the world that we actually live in, prepare them to really be able to be successful in that world. And I think that's a question when you decide what to do, you have to really find a good definition for what do you think will prepare your kids for the modern world we live in? What will make them successful? And what we've come up with as our goal for educating our children to the point where they fly out of the nest is we want children who are creative and who are confident. Because we feel the modern world we live in, with automation, jobs ever shrinking, the internet, robotics, like all the things that are facing us today, and then these pandemics and these other issues we're dealing with, a creative person will find solutions, and a confident person won't be afraid to pull the trigger on the idea they've thought up. The big reason we decided to go with homeschooling, what finally convinced me was that, the idea that we could.
And finally is like, it was August and everyone was registering for kindergarten, and we finally didn't register, and that was because in Connecticut you don't have to do any paperwork or anything.
She convinced me that it would be best for this one child of ours, the way we saw he learned was very hands-on and active, and he was not going to get that in public school.
No, and I think you saw that become very clear when we took our oldest for speech lessons that the school had. A speech language therapist, and we'd sit there for our half-hour lesson while he was in with the teacher, and you watched the little kindergartners in lunch getting yelled at. Be quiet.
Stand in line.
Be quiet.
Hands at your sides.
Okay, now because you, kid, weren't quiet, we are going to stay here. We're losing recess. We're losing recess. And I thought to myself, that's the stupidest thing. These little kids need to be outside. Let them scream and run around outside, then they'll be able to be quiet. But no, you're making them be quiet. Now they're losing recess. They're gonna have to be quieter. It's gonna be harder for them. It's just so counterintuitive to children.
Yeah, so
and I think that for you, that
drove
showed
it
you.
home.
Yeah, the time that's wasted.
The amount of time that the kids in public school, and I understand why, if you have 20 kids to one adult,
You need them.
5 kids to 1 adult. If I go take the kids by myself, I get to be very, okay guys, stand in line, hands at your sides, quiet, listen. But it's every day, all day. The amount of time they spend not learning anything other than how to be quiet, how to stand in a line, how to keep their hands to themselves. And that finally pushed me over and said, no,
That was the right decision.
Yeah, we need to. So then we had to really address those 3 things. Will they actually learn what they need to learn at homeschool? Will they be properly socialized and not some weird kid? And then how do we do it? So let's talk about that first one.
We are neither one of us certified teachers. We did not go to college to teach.
Yeah, so coming into this, you might have the same doubts about yourself, like, am I gonna be able, just trying to teach my kid how to brush his teeth and I wanna pull my hair out, so how am I gonna teach him algebra? Before we talk about the homeschool side, let's talk about public school for a moment. And remember that public school is not perfectly teaching our children everything, okay? Think about your time in school. Think about reading, writing, history, science, algebra, mathematics, all the different classes you went through. Think about at the age of 12, some of the tests you would have taken in history class, in science class. And now tell me honestly in the comments below, if you went back and took all the different subjects, all those tests, would you pass all those tests?
There's a reason that show's smarter than a 3rd grader, right?
Yeah.
All those facts that you memorize.
All those classes you sat through, you didn't actually learn all that information. You just memorized it for the test, put it on the test, got your A, your B, your C, and then forgot it and moved to the next test that you had to prepare for. Public school is not perfectly teaching everything to all children. So let's just blow that out of the water. You no longer have to feel like your child at the age of 20 has to know everything about everything.
No,
okay?
Nobody knows that.
So now are you going to be able to teach them all the things they really do actually need to know to be successful?
Yes.
Well, I was going to say no.
Oh.
You are not.
Well, okay.
If my child wants to be an engineer, I'm not going to be able to teach him all those things.
Well, I mean, you said to be successful. And if your definition of success is
Okay.
being a creative, confident person, then
Well, yes.
I think parents, you can.
Yes. Okay,
Uh-huh.
nice. I'll take that. But what I was going to say is, no, you yourself
If they want to
probably
be an
can't-
engineer, no, you're not going to be teaching that. They'll be going to college to become an
Exactly.
engineer.
Your job as the homeschool parent overseeing this is not to teach your kids everything yourself. It's to enable them,
It's to give them the tools.
give them the tools. And fortunately, no better time than ever have we had access to all the tools you could possibly want.
With the internet, there is a wealth of information out there of things your kids can learn, of ways that you can help your kids learn these things. There are books. Teach your child to read in 100 lessons that with minutes a day, your kid's reading.
The point is, you don't have to know everything. We have the internet, and everything you or your child will need to know, they will be able to learn through either something on the internet or someone you find and connect with through the internet. So don't feel like you have to be great at science and great at mathematics and great at reading and writing and grammar. You don't. So we'll get more into how we actually teach and submersively teach our kids in the next video. But basically, the question of can we teach our kids everything they need to know to be successful? No, yes. We personally may not be able to teach them everything, but we are just the guides and the enablers of self-directed learning, which is how every human being actually learns, self-directed. When they choose to activate the gray matter, that's how you learn.
When they're ready.
So that's the side of learning. What about the weird kids? Socialization. I don't want these weird homeschool kids that I knew growing up. Let's get into weird kids. That's weird.
Let's get into it.
You've developed some handling habits. What do you like to do handling wise with your chicks to make them friendly?
So, I don't like to chase them around a lot because that makes them fear you. Like, oh no, here comes the guy who wants to catch us all the time. So, if you need him to go someplace, like herding them, sort of like that, instead of like chasing them and grabbing them, messing with them, that wouldn't be good to make the chickens your friend. So what I like to do to put them in the box, you hold the wings down because you can hurt a wing if you don't hold the wings down because they can flap a lot and that can cause damage to the wings.
I knew back when we were in public school, I feel like there was very few people homeschooling
There were
compared
fewer,
to today.
yes.
And I feel like the motives usually were
Religious.
either religious or like my kid is getting really, really picked on. I gotta get him out of this situation because they were weird. And when I say weird kids, I'm going like this, weird kids, because everybody could look at another person and think they're weird.
Yeah.
We own camels, that's weird. So I'm not saying your homeschool kid is weird. What I'm saying is society might go, oh, that kid's weird. He might be a little genius.
Oh yeah, that's usually what happens.
We've seen little
They're-
geniuses get just picked on
They're
and
specialized in the things they love, and it's different. So weird is different. We're all weird. We're all
in different ways.
Yeah.
Some of us have a bigger group of people that are similar to us, and so we don't feel weird.
But you are. Don't worry.
Yeah, but we'll tell you, you're definitely a weirdo. So the point about socialization was coming into homeschooling, I didn't want to have a quote unquote weird kid. And really what I was saying is I want to have a kid who is somebody I would consider well socialized. Well, here's another good spot for you to say, let's define this before we pick our education. What do we even mean by someone who's well socialized?
There's no argument that school is a way for a child to be socialized. Is it an ideal way for them to be socialized? I don't think so.
What does socialized mean? You're the grammar girl here.
Well, I can just read it.
Oh, look at that, the internet. You can find information on the internet without
Now
a teacher's help.
don't get sarcastic.
So what does it mean when we say like we want our kids socialized? There's two definitions for the word socialized.
There's the
first one,
activity of
bing.
mixing socially with others.
School is great at mixing children with lots of others. So public school is great at that. What about the second definition?
The process of learning to behave in a way that is acceptable to society.
That's the one we think you can do better with homeschooling. What is public school doing to our children right now?
If you put 20 kids in a group with one teacher overseeing, there will be socialization.
You're being socialized.
There will be bullying. There will be kids that are excluded. There will be cliques formed. There's a reason that there's little kids being bullied into the point where they commit suicide. Because kids aren't being taught kindness. They're not being taught
Respect.
It's not happening. And that was not something I wanted for my kids. Austin goes, what we want them, how we want them educated is to encourage their creativity, to encourage their confidence. I also want to encourage their kindness and their respect for other people. You throw 20, pretty much any animal you could think of, 20 puppies in a pool, they're not going to be taught proper skills. If you throw 20 calves together, they're not going to be taught proper skills.
If you take the dog illustration, I've trained a lot of dogs and I've worked with really good trainers, and they will always tell you need to expose your dog to older, younger, different breeds, different places. And that is not what public school is good at. Public school puts 20 of the exact same age together. And think about, this is one I always remember, because I was teased in early years. Third graders, I was in second grade and I was getting teased by third graders on the bus. If you're a third grader, how do you view a second grader? You don't want to be friends with a second grader. They're a second grade. They're less quality.
They're 1 year younger.
Like beef is graded, so are the kids, and you're less grade than me. We're not friends, we're enemies, and I pick on you, and I don't want you in my club, and I don't want to play with you. To the point where even when I would see my own sister in the halls at a younger age, I'd feel afraid to go give my sister a hug because, well, she's a first grader and my other friends will think that's lame if I am friends with somebody younger. That's what is enforced in public school.
Now, Is there a benefit to having kids around children their own age? Yeah, sure. And
Sure.
they love it. Is that where they should be at 8 hours a day for 5 days a week
We
with
don't think
one
so.
adult watching over them?
No.
No.
We believe a well-socialized kid, if you take that kid and drop him at a family reunion where there's a lot of extra family, not just like your core, but people you don't even know, how does that kid act? How would you answer that? I think if one of my kids showed up at a family reunion with a bunch of people they don't even know and their grandfather came up to them, I'd want my son or daughter to look grandpa in the eye, talk with grandpa, spend some time hearing grandpa stories. Meeting that uncle that they don't really remember, they've never really met, they could actually look at him, have a conversation, not be like, I want to play video games, and not spend the whole entire family reunion just with the cousins their age. Sure, they can go and play with the cousins, and hopefully the cousins are younger cousins and older ones. And my well-socialized child, I would want to see cater to the younger cousins and make sure, oh, the little cousins get to play too, and not, hey, you're only 8 and I'm 10, you're not allowed to play. That's what I think is a well-socialized child, and I don't think public school does a good job at creating that.
We had a friend, a family friend, and they had a large family like we did. We were talking about homeschooling, and she was saying she knew grade school teachers, and they said the kindergarten, first grade were the most important time in the child's life to be in a classroom setting with these other kids their age. So she enrolled her son there, and her son was so intelligent, such a bright little boy. Now, what he learned in kindergarten and first grade was that he was different, he was weird, other kids didn't want to sit with him, they picked on him. At 5 years old, that was socialization for him. And when people say like kindergarten, first grade, this is the socialization that's valuable for our children, I think, no, there are so many better options out there to get our kids socialized.
So how do we socialize our kids? How do we make sure they become that little confident, creative person who in a group of people isn't just playing video games or just playing with their cousins their same age?
Yeah, our little calves who could benefit from
Some old cows.
from some
kicking
old
at 'em.
cows teaching them what's right and wrong. We are involved in groups where there are kids of various ages, adults, and that's how our kids are socialized. So they're around kids their age, kids a little younger, kids older, and adults as well with supervision. So they learn and they get to play. They also learn how to have conversations.
Yeah. Remember, we said at the beginning, homeschooling isn't perfect at all things. And if you take your child and say, well, now I'm going to homeschool, here's a computer where you can learn everything on the internet, go to your room and learn, and you just do that every day, all day, we don't think that's good socialization. You, as the parent, need to put, just like as the dog owner, you have to expose
takes
your puppy
work. Yeah, it
to
takes
a lot
extra
of different
effort.
things. One of the things I had to do with our puppies, young age, bring them to the farmer's market where they're going to see different dogs, people, smells, sights. You have to do that with your kids. Bring them to different groups. If your little kid is into Legos, find a little Lego building co-op or group. Or if your kid's into animals, take them to a horse riding stable. FFA. If you're religious, use that element of your religious community. Be very involved there. Be around older ones and younger ones. If you're not religious, if your kid's interested in science, I believe in science. Whatever the passions, the interests are.
There are groups out there to encourage that. That is one of the public school. They do the after school activities,
right?
Where they'll have kids of different ages. They'll do the FFA things. There's value in that.
Yes.
There's value in older children teaching younger children.
Absolutely.
There's value in these smaller groups of kids who have the oversight of an adult. I don't think a class of 20 kids with one teacher is the best way to socialize.
The only thing a class of 20 kids has in common is their age.
Mm-hmm.
So a group like that is just so fractured. But a group of young kids around the same age that are all in FFA, maybe one or two got forced to do it by their parents, but probably all of them at least share an interest in animals. And there'll be less of that oh, we don't like you and we don't like you. there'll be more of a uniting bond. And if it's music, if your kid loves music, maybe in a normal classroom, your kid playing his clarinet is a weirdo. But if you go put him in a
Both
kid
of us
orchestra,
clarinet.
he's gonna be part of the orchestra. And that socialization makes him feel proud. If your little boy is a genius with plants, get him in a kids farming club or a community garden, learning from masters. That's the kind of socialization that we believe is better for any kid, and that's another reason we think that all kids would do better from homeschooling.
We're so concise.
The third thing that I was concerned about, we're going to talk about in tomorrow's video, which is the how will we do it. We've been doing it a while now, and we're going to tell you what we do. And like we said, there's a lot of big differences in homeschooling. So in the next video, we'll talk about the how. But before we go, I want to address a couple of the big arguments that I've faced when talking about this with people that I know are going to show up in the comments below.
Which you will face as well, whether it's from well-meaning
Yeah.
parents, family members, educators. You will hear about
We'll
it.
go through these kind of bulletized, and if you want to know more, ask Homesteady in your questions below and we'll address them. So just a couple of them. Studies show that blah, blah, blah. Studies show that if they learn to read younger, they will do better. Okay, so studies show that they'll do better. Well, how did the study rate
doing better.
what doing better means? How did the study show that the kids were more successful? Did they base that off of standardized testing? I don't believe you have to do standardized testing to kids. I see no value to it. I don't care what my kid gets on a standardized test. I did a ton of standardized tests, so did a lot of the kids I went to school with. What point did they have in my adult life? Zilch. So I don't care about what the studies prove.
Yeah, this is Austin's way of saying we're not going to focus on studies or reports, because both sides have a plethora of these things. For us, you know, it's one of those things that you can always find a study to prove your point.
Yeah. Generally, I've noticed public school kids learn a lot of the basics quicker. So you could say, well, public school is better at teaching more kids to read at a younger age, and studies show kids who read at a younger age are more successful. Successful at what? Getting a job? I don't even want my kids to have to get a job. I'd like them to be little entrepreneurs who do what they love.
Can you cut out all this angry stuff?
No, I'm gonna leave it in.
We're focusing on why we made these decisions to homeschool, from what we experienced in school, as well as what we were seeing happening to kids and our kids.
So before you go throw out the study show comment, ask yourself, what is the actual measurement that they're using to claim something is more successful, and do you buy into that? Because I probably don't. The next thing you're going to hear, but I talked to a teacher and they said. Do you want to address that one, or should I smack that one too?
In our society, I think we've gone to the point of when somebody's a saint, what do you call it? Canonizing?
Yeah.
We're putting teachers on this pedestal that they are these saints.
Teachers are heroes.
Teachers are doing a job. There are some very good teachers. There are some teachers who are terrible.
Awful.
There are teachers who it's their life's mission. I can name a few of teachers I had that just inspired me to learn about things that I wouldn't, and they encouraged me in ways that no other teachers did. And then there was like my Spanish teacher who spent most of her time in the hallway yelling at kids and making sure they had a hall pass. Like, she was not a great teacher. All teachers are not saints. They're people. They're people doing a job. So just because a teacher is telling you something that they've been taught, it still doesn't mean it's the best for your child. There is no teacher who will care about your child like you do.
You can't argue with that. If that's not true, you got a problem. So the other thing about teachers, would you ask, and a lot of people do this, and a lot of people believe the teacher thing too, but would you ask an insurance salesman if you should buy insurance to protect you for such and such a problem? If you do, you're gonna be sold insurance. because the insurance salesman's livelihood is centered on you believing that that's important and you should have it.
And they
is he a
believe
bad
it too.
guy?
No, he believes it too.
He's seen insurance work for people. He wants you to buy flood insurance because you might get flooded. Now, I live up on a hill. I'm probably never going to get flooded. But if I talk to an insurance salesman, I bet you he talks me into flood insurance. If you talk to a teacher whose career is centered on this organization thriving and getting more and more kids into it so they get more and more funding from the government, so that teacher gets a paid salary
and
a
more
summer
supplies
off
for students
and all that, of course the teacher's going to say, no, the best way to teach a kid is the public school system. That doesn't mean they're right. Teachers don't have the end-all be-all say on education in kids.
Especially for your child.
Yeah.
I knew my little boy wouldn't thrive in a classroom setting.
You know your kids better than any teacher, and you care for your kids better than any teacher. And like Kay said, I have some teachers I hold dear in my heart. There are a list, I could tell you 5 names right now.
Uncle Bourbon.
And Uncle Bourbon, a lot of you know, was one of them. He was actually one of my teachers. One of the best teachers I've ever had. And yes, he did a lot for me. But the rest of them were either meh, and then there was a couple who were garbage teachers. They made me feel stupid. I used to be a nerdy, like I'm gonna be an A+ student, and one teacher in 1 year ruined it, and I turned into a class clown. And I should thank her, because I'm probably more entertaining as a class clown than a nerd. But yeah, so just because some teacher said something, not a good argument. I don't care what the teacher said. So there's the other one. We just want to end this video reminding you, like, of course we think this is the best. We're not trying to insult anybody. We're not pointing at you and saying you're a bad parent if you said your kid's to public school. What we're saying is this is what we believe to be the best, or we wouldn't do it.
This is for us the best decision we can make for our kids.
And we really encourage any of you who this year are on the line, and I know there's a lot who are like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this, but I think I want to because of all this stuff going on right now. You can do it.
Have confidence in yourself.
You absolutely can do it, and we're gonna help you in the next video just by sharing how we do it. And hopefully you can glean a few ideas from that.
This is something we feel passionately about.
Yeah.
And I think we feel passionately about it because it's worked so well for our family.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We've seen our kids really thrive.
We've seen smart, creative people, just their confidence destroyed, and public school make them think they're dummies and thrown to the side and weirdos and all that. I've seen the destruction public education can do to, I believe every child when they're at that beginning stage has the ability to be a master, has the ability to be just a craftsman or an artist, passion-driven, amazing human being. And I personally, I 100% believe the people who design public school, do your research. Public school is the design, the public school we have today is the design of the Prussian government to make soldiers and factory workers. Hundreds and hundreds, a couple hundred years ago. That's where our modern school system comes from. It's designed to crush creativity, to wipe out confidence, and create drones who will do what you say. I will not send my kids to that, and I encourage you to see what you can do about homeschool. We're gonna get a lot of comments in this one, and that's okay. We can disagree. Everyone can disagree civilly, and that's another thing public school's not good at teaching you to do, but you can disagree civilly. So, agree to disagree.
No wonder they like me
fun.
better.
Truth. All right. That felt good.
Yeah, you got that all out.
Get that out. Make sure to click here to get on our email list. I'm going to be sending out some emails from time to time to help both homeschoolers and public schoolers supplement their child's education with some helpful things I find, good podcasts, YouTube videos, online resources that we use. And if you're a parent who's trying to help your kid learn more and more of what they love, you're going to enjoy being on the email list.